Hello and welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, The Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops, a former D1 Hooper and current teacher, husband, and father of 3 amazing kids.
And I'm Omari for the second Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
And of course, we're always blessed to be joined by our producer, Wes Davenport, who, if you are not listening to him and Blake Silverman over on the Pin Down on the Detroit Bad Boys YouTube channel, you absolutely should be. You guys should be taking in the Detroit Bad Boys content. Always want to shout them out. They gave me a great start. I appreciate it. While you're taking in the Detroit Free Press content of the Omari Sankofa for the second. And I will shout out my Substack, the Motor City Hoops Substack. I've started adding videos into my content, which I've got a lot of really good feedback. You know, so if they run an action that I like or the Cade eye manipulation from last night, I put that stuff in there. But first, Omari, your hair is sick, man. I love your hair so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
At 37 years old, I've gotten to the point in my life where I just really don't care about being bald. Like, my students will be like, "Oh, Mr. Simon, why don't you do this?" I'm like, guys, I am happily married for 10 plus years. At this point, unless my wife says grow hair or I'm divorcing you, I just don't care. But I was looking at you before we started and I was like, that's kind of dope, man. That looks really nice. I like that.
I appreciate that. I'm going to get braided tomorrow, so it will look different next time I'm on the pod. But yeah, man, like, I have not gotten a proper haircut, like actually getting like a lot taken off since 22, like early 2002, 22 maybe, like not 2002. But yeah, I'm going to keep it going, man. Like, I'm going to have, like most men are going to have a bald era at some point. I'm trying to prolong my hair era as long as I can. So that's really one of my only 2025 New Year resolutions, is just to prolong this era that I'm in right now. So I appreciate that.
Aruna says, grow the fro, Omari. He says, grow the fro. I also wanted to shout out Tweet House said, let's go, getting the pod in before I head to practice. Hope you guys are having a good Tuesday. There's a balance in the force now that the Pistons are 18-18. Obviously, we're going to talk a lot about that. I also want to push the one narrative I always push, that is B-Bobbler for the NBA's official bobblehead sponsor. I will continue to push that as my only narrative around the NBA. But Omari, this team is 18-18.
Yeah.
18-18. This team is 500. What is going on? 7 of 8. They're winning close games. They're making comebacks, doing it without the unfortunate injury to Jaden Ivey. What are the vibe checks, Omari? Vibe checks.
Yeah, and going back even further, like 9 of 12. So at one point they were 11-18, like it was something like that. But yeah, 18-18, like, people are paying attention to it. It's a big deal. But I mentioned on Twitter earlier, I feel like it's not getting quite the attention as it normally would, because, obviously the Lions are one of the biggest stories in like sports right now, like not even just Detroit. But this team is good. Like, they're playing good fundamental basketball. Like, guys are stepping up and hitting big shots. Like, guys like Malik Beasley, THJ can step up on a whim when you need them to. Tobias Harris, I think he was a little bit cold to start the season, but he's been really, really solid over the last few weeks, getting back into form. It's a fun team. You know, like, you have off the glass lobs in transition to Asar. And even when you don't have guys like J.I. and Asar in the lineup, like, they're still finding ways to clutch out wins. So it's a fun team. Like, it's a really fun team. What they're doing seems like it's sustainable. And the vibes are pretty great. There's not, like, I think about this point last year when they still, I think, only had 3, maybe 4 wins. And just the vibes now, it's like a completely different team. Like, it's not even recognizable compared to last year.
Yeah, it's unreal. Good vibes from Big Dog Pistons on Twitter. I didn't even think about that. Here's what's crazy. I didn't even think about the fact they won that game without Asar also. Like, that's kind of how this team has played this year. This is my guy, Matt Issa, I think it was either him or Richard Stamen tweeted out, like, who has been the most resilient NBA team this year? And I wanted to take it as an opportunity to boost the Pistons, but I didn't have the time to go through all 30 teams and, teams that have maybe dealt with more injuries or ups and downs or whatever and fought through better. I don't know if there is one. There probably is, but they came back from 22 down without arguably their second best offensive player up to this point in the season, Jaden Ivey. A lot of the stats, the raw counting numbers would say that. And the best perimeter defender, if not one of, between him and Ron. Like without that guy also. And they just find, here's what was crazy about Orlando. Orlando is the answer. You guys are all absolutely correct on that. Great call. That's good thing I didn't tweet Pistons because I would look like an idiot. So thank you guys for correcting me now. Orlando is definitely the answer. Ron Holland. I don't even know how many minutes did Ron play last night, Omari, because
I don't even know if he played more than like 16.
Did he? But
I'm going to see.
In 120 seconds, he made as much impact as about anybody, is where I was going with that. He had some of the biggest sequences in that game.
Ron played 14 minutes and 46 seconds. And just his impact immediately. Like he had several plays where he just straight up ripped the ball or read the passing lane perfectly. JB talked about it after the game, defense and the offense, but that's just engineering ways to win, right? Like they come out the gate flat defensively. And on top of that, Portland's making some really tough shots. Like throughout the game, they just pretty much hit every shot they needed to just about. And this team can figure things out on the fly, right? I think that's the mark of a team to me that is sustaining what they've been doing so far.
Yeah, it's really impressive. The resiliency, the bounce back. I think, last night really showed Cade Cunningham's 3-point shooting and how important that is. That was a huge aspect of not just his game, but that comeback in general. Malik, somebody said it. Who said Malik Beasley was their favorite player? Shad said Beasley might be my favorite, or Shad might be my favorite Piston. He's a lot of fun, Omari. This is going to be heartbreaking if he's not able to stay around this offseason.
When he hit that 3 last night, you just see the relief on his face. And everybody in the arena is like, yeah, he finally got one to go. After starting he was 0 of 9.
I think it was 0. Yeah.
Yeah, he was 0 of 9 overall, 0 of 8 from 3. Stuff like that. He's definitely been, I think in a lot of ways, the vibes leader for this team.
Yeah, I think this is the point. Last year, they would have lost by 30 in this game, and Portland was the team that started the losing streak after being... I agree with that. I don't think they would have bounced back from that game and at least came all the way back and won. I could have seen them fighting him back, getting it to 10, and then not having enough to push it out. And yeah, Portland's not good, but other than Jeremy Grant, that was kind of Portland's best roster. Again, I know Portland is not good. I understand that. But Simons was really shooting the ball well. I've watched quite a bit of the Blazers this year because of what I do. Shaedon Sharpe had a really good game passing the ball. That was a really nice game from him in regards to that. And he made some shots. I do want to throw out there because I feel like Shaedon Sharpe gets a lot of love from Pistons fans. People are wishing that Shaedon Sharpe was on this team. I just want you to take note of how much Shaedon Sharpe played on the ball in that game for the Blazers and how little he was doing stuff off the ball. I'm not saying you couldn't incorporate that with Cade, but Shaedon does a lot of stuff in isolation and using ball screens. When you're just saying about perfect fits, I don't think he's the player that a lot of times we think of as just this off-the-ball bucket getter when you're talking about pairing that exact archetype with Cade. That was another takeaway for me. Not that Shaedon was bad last night, but just in regards to specifically him playing with Cade Cunningham.
Yeah, and that's what I think has been interesting is just how you talk about specific players within that age range, which guys would be the best fit hypothetically next to Cade, has evolved over time, right? Before that draft, we were talking on paper, Ben Math's a guy who can just be that perfect 3-and-D spacer. And then Shaedon Sharpe came out strong. And then it's not that we ever denied that Jaden Ivey could be that guy too. Obviously being the best ball handler of those 3 guys, I think you always need that as well. But you could have seen conceivably all 3 of those guys filling that role pretty well. And I think now you look at that order now, and J.I.'s probably had the best season of all 3 of those guys, right? I think the calculus for that changes significantly when J.I. is shooting, 39, 40%.
I think he's over 40 now, because of that last game was so good. And I think my biggest takeaway is I don't know that either of those 2 guys are just undoubtedly better fits next to Cade Cunningham. Now, where do those 3 guys end up in terms of just overall players? That can still be a conversation, but I'm just saying I don't know that either of those guys are J.I. might be the best defender of the 3, to be honest with you, because Shaedon's not that great on that end, and Benedict Mathurin isn't either, and Ben is not, as much as I loved him, hasn't been a good decision maker. So I want to go back to Beasley real fast. Another thing I noticed about Beasley is his communication, and it was one of the biggest things I took away from Denver, Omari, was the JB pregame presser. He was asked specifically about Malik Beasley, and his quote completely went away from the shot making and all to vibes. He was like, his personality and his energy and all of that is what really gives this team. It is one of his biggest contributions to this team. And you can see that on the court. I thought even last night, he had a tough defensive assignment, him and Tim Hardaway Jr. And Tim Hardaway Jr. probably takes more from the Pistons fan base than anybody, sometimes rightfully so. But those guys competed their butts off on the defensive end, even with Simons and Sharp getting off like they did. Like, still, I thought they competed really, really hard, and they ended up making some big plays defensively.
No, they really did. I thought Asar had an interesting quote last week talking to him in the locker room where he said, like, just one mark of the team being different from last season is that you're seeing guys who are not known for stepping up and routinely making those types of plays in necessary moments, step up and make those types of plays. And I don't even think he really named vets, but he was naming, just like some of the younger guys on the team, obviously, who have not been those types of players. But I think it's just being able to summon that energy when you need it. Like, this has not been a team that's been able to just sort of on a whim lock down and say, okay, like, we need to summon something tonight and find a way to will ourselves to victory. Like last night, we saw that with Cade, right? Like, he just sort of took the mantle over in the second quarter, got things going. We saw that with Ron, but especially late with Tim Hardaway Jr. and Malik Beasley. Like, Tim gives you the ability to just turn up on a whim. Like, and I'm pretty sure his shooting numbers over the last 2 weeks have been close to what they were at the beginning of the year too, because he started the year off on fire from three before he had the head injury as well.
Omari, I appreciate this. He corrected his there from the EI or from the ERE to the EIR. Much respect, Mr. Sankofa. Omari, I want to see how close you can get here. 8 games, last 8 games for every team in the NBA. All right. These are advanced stats, the offensive, defensive net ratings. Where do you think the Pistons over their last 8? This is every team's last 8 games. So the Pistons are 7-1. The Cavs are 8-0. The Thunder are 8-0, obviously. Where do you think the Pistons are ranked in the NBA in offensive rating over their last 8 games, over this 7 out of 8, with the one loss being to the Nuggets?
Man, that's a good one, because I would imagine they've been top 10.
They're 18th on the season as we record this. Where do you think they're at for that 8-game stretch?
Okay, well, if they're 18th on the season, then honestly, I would think that are they top 10? I would think they're probably hovering around 10.
Yeah, they are 6th.
Okay.
Over their last 8 games, this team is 6th in offensive rating. Now, like, obviously I'm cheating here a little bit because I'm picking out of, the last 8 games where they've played their best, but 6th. I didn't think this offense was going to be that good, but I remember feeling like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but this team was going to be pretty good offensively, right? Like, this is where it wasn't going to be the defense that was going to take this major stride. It was potentially going to be the offense. Speaking of the defense, where do you think the defense has been over this 7 out of 8?
I think they can summon, and the difference with this team, I think, on defense has been the physicality aspect, where they're allowed to be physical, I think, by the officiating and when they just come in and muster that energy. Like, I think they've been really solid defensively, and I think the tone setters on this team have to really set that tone to ignite this team defensively. Like, when Isaiah Stewart's making some of the insane blocks he's made this past week, like when Ron Holland goes out and he's just immediately just tussling and doing everything he can to force turnovers, like Asar, obviously. Like, we could see this. I think we've seen this team hit a level of defensive organization that they have not been able to do consistently in the past.
Afra says, what's the net rating? I'm getting there, my guy. So where do you think, Omari? Wes said he thinks 13th for defensive rating. What do you think? Last 8 games.
I would say 11th.
They're 14th. So 112.6, 14th. Now, net rating. They are 6th in the NBA at a plus almost 4. The Cavs and the Thunder are just silly. Here's the funny one for the NBA. The Boston Celtics are 4-4 over their last 8 games.
And they lost to Portland, right?
And they have a net rating of 11.5 still. They're playing 500 basketball over their last 8 and still have that. The Nuggets at 7.1, the Bucks at 5.2, and then you get to the Pistons at 3. Like, this is quality basketball. This is good basketball over the last 8 games. And I know, YouTube user, you kind of brought up what I answered over on Game Theory. Guys, there's a lot of Pistons content out there. Over on Game Theory, we did a whole segment, and it was not my idea. Sam said, like, hey, we need to talk about the Pistons because are they good? Are they fun? Are they competitive? All of that. I also was on No Ceilings over the weekend. That dropped today with Tyler Metcalf talking for 30 minutes or so just about Ron Holland and the Pistons. So a lot of really good content out there. And I know Omari is always getting asked to go on radio shows and other podcasts and stuff as well. So lots of really good content beyond just the Pistons Pulse, including the pin down. Yes, Wes, you were crushing that one. So really, really nice over these games. I want to talk about the rotation now, Omari. Like we've talked about all of this, all of the love for how they've been playing. Where do they continue to go? 3 games since J.I. went out and 3 different starters. Wendell Moore Jr. got his chance. Hasn't been great. Hasn't been able to make shots at least. Then Asar gets his chance. Really interesting in those minutes. He gets sick, so they give it to Malik Beasley. Where would you go moving forward? Would you continue to switch it up and try out things? What are your thoughts on that kind of rotation? I don't think anything else is moving, right? Like, I don't think we think you're not going to move. I know people want THJ out. You're not doing that right now. So I think it's just the one spot.
Yeah, like, so JB did say that he's going to look at putting different guys into that spot, just depending on matchups and whatnot. That's probably the way I would lean. If I had to stick with just one guy, I would stick with Asar, just because I think there really is a natural chemistry that Cade has with Asar, offensively that can unlock him and, transition. And like defensively, I think he was just a spark for that team all night. Like when he had 5 steals in the first half, like he had 6 for the game, and like probably could have had more if he had played more. But I think if you want to maintain that defensive punch, like I think Asar gives you a lot of that in the starting unit. And if you could force turnovers, which they haven't been great at doing, admittedly, for most of this season, but if you can create turnovers and get those easy looks, then maybe that offsets some of the spacing you lack with JD and Asar being on the floor together.
Was it on this pod where I talked about the amount of clutch minutes they've played this season? Or was
I don't think so.
It's on a different one. Wes, would you be able to look that up for us? Just comparison of how many clutch minutes they've already played this year compared to the total last year. Because whatever podcast I was on talking about it, the number is staggering. And I just saw this comment somewhere in terms of loving to see, YouTube user, Pistons near the top of the league in clutch minutes played is what makes me happy. That's a great point, because we've talked about this needing to be a year for data collection, and you get a lot of data collection in those clutch minutes. You see what guys are able to do. I think I'm probably with you. I think I would probably stick with Asar. I threw out my Marcus Sasser idea. I will say Sasser had a huge play in that game as well. He had a big time steal in that game that led to transition. He's probably going to settle into the spot he's in now, and that's fine. I think Sasser's starting to figure out his role a little bit and what makes him successful in the NBA. I think I'm with you. I think probably Asar. I wouldn't hate seeing Ron Holland get that chance every once in a while, but Asar makes a lot of sense, just taking a lot of those matchups in the starting unit.
Yeah, and I like Ron coming off of the bench. Like, I think he just comes in with a feistiness that could really inject the team, like with some life. Like the Pistons were just so dead out the gate last night. And I mean, 3rd game in 4 nights, you're down two key guys in Asar and J.I. That doesn't mean you should be down 22 in the second quarter to the Portland Trailblazers, but they were just completely lifeless. And outside of Cade, I really do think it was Ron. Like also Paul Reed, who I think we're going to talk about a bit later, but like just to come in with like that feisty energy, like I think as a bench unit, if you're not going to be like this perfectly balanced unit, you need to at least come into the game and kind of muck things up, right? Like really make the opposing team like comfortable. And if you can do that by just forcing turnovers and igniting transition, which like Ron and Asar obviously are probably the 2 guys on the team who are best at that right now. Like, I just like what Ron brings when he comes in. Like we talked about last night, he played not even 15 minutes, but he was one of the most memorable players from the game just because of how much he's able to do within that time frame.
So I think what we'll do, we'll get to segment 2 and then we'll talk about some specific players. You guys asked some questions. That'll lead us into it. And then also we did want to talk about Paul Reed. Here are the numbers. Wes, the man. This is why he is the best producer in the business, along with doing his own Pistons podcast that is elite as well. From NBA.com, Pistons have already played 75 clutch minutes this year. That's in 36 games. Last year, they had a total of 114 clutch minutes. So, I mean, say you can fairly double that, right? We're not even half of the way through the season. 150 clutch minutes over 114. When you're talking that amount, like what you can actually get in clutch minutes, that's substantial. That's meaningful. That matters a lot. That allows Cade to grow and learn from those situations as well as everybody else on the roster. So I think that is very important. That's a great point from YouTube user. And also, I think why this play-in or not conversation has come up recently, which we may touch on as well. But we will get into Paul Reed and some of the individual players right after this short break.
All right, we're back with segment 2, and we're going to lead off with Paul Reed just because I feel like we have not talked about Paul Reed as much, and we have, but probably not enough. Like, I feel like Paul Reed is sort of settled into this like perfect, like kind of hybrid, like second or third big role, like games like last night where you're just not getting a spark anywhere. For him to just come in, and I think the rate he's forced turnovers and like just everything, right? Like, I think he gives you. Like, I feel like he gives you a little bit of Isaiah Stewart, but he also gives you a little bit of Jalen Duren. And, like, I'd be curious to see the extent that you agree with that. But it's been fun to watch him come in. And, it just seems like he's able to ignite things with how pesky he is.
You know this. I'm very shy whenever I get my media opportunities, right? I've said in how many media sessions now and never ask a single question. I've never been closer than after the Nuggets game wanting to ask JB how hard it is to navigate the center minutes because of what Paul Reed has brought to the team and trying to make sure you get your 21-year-old lottery pick enough minutes while also incorporating Isaiah Stewart, but also rewarding a Paul Reed who, in my opinion, has given really good minutes every time he's been called upon. And to me, that should be rewarded. And what I think we've seen is JB's cut into Duren's minutes a little bit, Stewart's minutes a little bit. And when he goes JD, Stu, and then instead of going right back to JD, he'll give Paul Reed some minutes. Omari, this man, and per 36 is, it can be tough. Like, we can't always take 6 stocks per 36 minutes. 6 of those steals and blocks. It's unbelievable what he does. And he really fits into what they've done with their ball screen coverage because they're blitzing and playing at the level a lot more. And so that plays right into Paul Reed because he's not going to be a great drop coverage big. That's not what he does. But the energy he brings, to me, he almost is like a perfect, 8 to 10 minutes a night and go in there and be disruptive, bring some energy. I kind of like it. I kind of like that role. I'm very intrigued by it. I don't know if I believe there's much more of an upside than that, but a lot of credit to Paul Reed, and he deserves a 5-minute part of this episode.
For sure, because you look at last season, just how many games it was like anybody step up and do something on either side of the ball to stop whatever streak the opposing team is on. And like Paul Reed is he's like a 5-hour energy, but like a 5-minute. Like, it's just like he's going to come in and it's just super concentrated. Like, he's going to give you like 30 minutes of effort, but concentrated into those 6 minutes. Like, that's what you need off the bench. Like, you really just need players who, like, if they're not going to mimic what you could get from the starting lineup, coming with his own unique energy, just bother the opposing team, force turnovers. Like you mentioned, he can guard at the level a little bit. Like, that's one thing I realized about Paul, that like not watching him as much before he got here, is that he really is on the smaller side for a center. But that I think also works to his advantage because he's pretty quick. I think he's quicker than you would expect, just given his position, and that works in his favor. So, yeah, the Pistons, like over the last few years, just needed a big who could come in and just give you maximum two-way effort, until the starters come back in. Like, they have not had that the entire time I've covered this team, and Paul Reed, I think, has filled that role very well for them.
Yeah, I love it. And you can count on him for a little mid-range jumper every game, every other game. And that's not bad. Matthew, this is a lie. You say, hey, you guys making some noise here in the Brazilian night. It is not nighttime. We have learned this. It is not night in Brazil yet because it's roughly the same time zone as what we are in right now. So there is no way. Shad, can Omari guess a time for you in Brazil and me in Germany? No, he cannot.
Nah, I'm not.
Omari doesn't even know what day it is. He might not know what month it is right now.
No, I didn't. Like earlier, I was like, man, like I can't get, like, there's a taco place across the street from me. And I was like, it's late Tuesday? It is Tuesday. Like, it took me all day to realize like it was Tuesday and I could get the Taco Tuesday deal. So
yeah. Chuck Brewer says Duren has been better over the last 5-6 games. Hasn't he? Or am I wishing to see it? I would agree with that. I told it to somebody today. I still don't think he's an impactful defender, especially in the way that we just talked about Paul Reed, and definitely not Isaiah Stewart. I don't think there's been as many negatives on the defensive end. I think he gets blamed for some things like starts of games and things like that. that aren't always his fault. Like, to be honest, listen, you will not find a bigger Cade Cunningham fan, and we need to find some time to talk Cade here in a second. Cade was the one getting beat at the point of attack to start the game last night. He gave up a straight line drive to Tamani Kamara. He gave up another one to Denny. He gave up another one to Scoot Henderson. And then he locked in the rest of the game and was really, really good. I just think Duren now at times is the scapegoat for any time this team isn't good defensively. And I don't think that's fair, while also still acknowledging he's not impactful in the way you would want a center to be impactful, especially one that has the limitations he does on the offensive end.
Essentially, not always being the solution doesn't inherently make you the problem, maybe.
Wait, say that again. You said it. You caught me off guard. Like this was more philosophical than what I was prepared for.
More like a riddle, maybe. I don't know. I lost it.
I think it was right. I think what you said was spot on.
Like you're saying that, like just because, like Duren may not have been the difference maker they needed in that moment. He was also not the one causing the problem. Essentially.
Yeah. No, I think it was right. I think you were right. Yeah. I'm sorry. I ruined it. My fault, man. That's messed up on me. I apologize.
It's okay.
All right. We talked about Ron Holland being as good as he is in 19 isn't talked about enough because of the...
Omari spit into it. It was perfect. Thank you.
Yes,
I appreciate the validation from the comments. Thank you.
This was 100% my fault. I'm actually going to feel bad the rest of the episode. It was... Gosh dang it. Now I feel awful.
It's okay. That's okay. I'll have another one day and you'll be ready.
Gosh dang it. I'm sorry.
It might be weeks, but I'll have another one. It might be months, but I'll have another one.
Yeah, you had a really good joke one time, too, that I didn't think was going to land, and then you, hit it perfect. So I believe that this is from KStat28. I believe he's the starting guard next to Cade. And, this is Keith Black Trudeau. Isn't talked about because of his limited minutes. I believe he's the starting guard next to Cade in 2 years. I think I continue to talk about this, bucket getter, this wing, this guard, whatever that needs to be off of Cade. It could be Ron Holland, right? I really think it's possible. If you go back to the draft, my scout on him was legit two-way wing, Jalen Brown-esque two-way wing. And I'm not saying he's going to get there. I don't know what the percentage chance outcome is, but I don't think there's a 0% chance he could turn into that type of player.
Yeah, I'm trying to pick my words very carefully here.
Why?
I see the Jalen Brown outline. When you watch Ron Holland, just his knack for getting to the rim, I think the raw athleticism, he has a ways to go as a playmaker, but I think the willingness is there. The ball handling, he could tighten it, but he's got some natural motion to him, especially when he's gathering for a layup. So I'm not saying I think he's going to become Jalen Brown tier or that's his already, but I see the pair. If I had to come up with a comparison, that's what I see. But I watch him play some nights. It's he's 19 years old and he's just got this natural ability to just kind of wiggle through space and get in there and finish. And he's finished at the rim pretty well too.
I mean, to me, it comes down to this. Can he take what he does in transition and apply it to the half court? And if he can, he's going to be really, really good, especially if the jumper comes around. And my other thing is, I still don't think the jumper is completely broke. And
it's not.
But this is the thing this is why the comp to Jalen Brown makes sense to me. Again, this is a long, drawn out, nobody's saying that this is what Ron Holland's going to become. Jalen Brown has questions about his left hand, his handle, all of these same things. Now, Jalen Brown is an all NBA level player. So to just sit here and this is a great point. YouTube user says, I'm not sure Ron is ever as strong as JB. That's a great point. That's the thing with Cade and Luka, right? I'm not saying Cade can't become the level of player that Luka is, but for him to be exactly what Luka is, he would have to fill out even more because a lot of what Luka gets done is with pure strength and size. So
Luka is he's just one of those dudes that is he's bigger than he looks on TV and he already looks big on TV. First time you see him, it's no, he's actually built like a power forward, he's not really built like a wing. He's built like a power forward and that's why he's able to bully guys.
Wes says, Omari, I didn't see the Jalen Brown thing at all pre-draft. I do now. I'm convinced the outline is there. Again, I don't want to put words in Wes's mouth. He's not saying he's going to become Jalen Brown, just the outline. A few other people. So we talked Paul Reed there. Stu, we talked about the center position. Probably should have went here instead of Ron Holland. Is it me or has Stu been a little off lately? I feel like he's been shooting the threes a little bit more. I mean, I don't know that, I think he went 0 for 3 in last night's game. I just kind of think this is the role that Stu's going to settle into, and it's not always going to be sexy. Some nights he's going to have more opportunities to protect the rim, and that's going to look really good. Other nights he's not. I actually think one of the areas he's improved is his finishing around the rim. I mean, one reason I wanted him to work on his three-pointer so much is I wasn't sure he was going to be able to score efficiently around the rim in like ball screen situations and stuff like that. And I think he has improved with that. Stu has flaws, obviously. I don't know that it hasn't been outwardly negative to me, I guess, with Isaiah Stewart. He's kind of just settling into a role that I think some nights it's going to be hard or it's going to be easy to kind of forget his contributions.
For sure. Like, I'm looking at his numbers now. On cleaning the glass, he is shooting 69% at the rim, which is in the 54th percentile for bigs. And that's by far the best mark of his career. It's the first time he's really scratched average as a finisher at the rim. And a lot of that, to me, is just, I think he's had more space to maneuver. And I think that his teammates have gotten better at knowing when to get him in the right spots, right? Like, I feel like there's an awkwardness there, even at the beginning of this season, that's really just been like entirely worked out. But with that, it also helps, I think, that Isaiah Stewart also is just like his shot volume is not where it's been in past seasons. Not, that's because he's not starting, right? So it's kind of like Paul Reed is a more limited role, but you're kind of maximizing your effort within those minutes. And I think defensively, I mean, he had some momentum shifting blocks a couple nights ago. Even last night, he had a couple blocks. You combine that with the finishing at the rim. And if three-point shooting ever comes back around, like, again, like, he's not going to be a guy who's going to get you 15 points every 3 or 4 games. Like, that's just not his role. That's not how he approaches the game. But for what his role is, I still think he's been really good in it. And this has arguably been his best season if you just look at raw impact on the court.
So Wes sent us a Ron Holland versus Jalen Brown rookie season comparison. So JB had played 78 games his rookie year. Ron's only 36. Sneaky thing, Ron Holland has played in every single game for the Pistons this year. Him and Malik are the only two guys to do that. So really interesting stat, but their numbers are eerily similar across the board outside of Ron's field goal percentage is better than Brown's. Brown's three-point percentage is significantly better than Ron's, but then Ron's free throw percentage is better than Jalen Brown. But like the scoring, the rebounds, assists, steals, like even some of the more analytical numbers, all of that, like it's not an unfair vision for what Ron Holland could be. And Brad B says, can Ron and Sar play 3-4 together if someone shoots? I think ultimately, like Keith Black Trudeau, I want to always give him the credit here, was the first one to really put this out there in terms of where I really took it serious. I can see the vision. I can see it. And especially that third wing definitely needs to be a guy that can shoot and score a lot of buckets. And ideally, you'd have a big man who could space the floor a little bit as well, Omari.
Yeah. And I also feel like there's been a lot of talk this season about who's the future 1, 2, 3 on this team, like who are Cade's, running mates going to be in the backcourt and wing. But like, honestly, like even if those two guys just end up being like really good kind of utility role player types that aren't necessarily guaranteed, like the 1s and 2s next to Cade, like I think that's fine. Like I think what they are, like what you're looking at, like for them to get to that point will require like a lot of growth on offense. And they're different players, right? Like Ron's 19, like it's really too early to say what he's going to become. But like to me, regardless of if Asar is the future 3 or 4 or whatever, like he's a guy that you probably prioritize just because what he gives you is something you can't easily go out and get. That's not a role that you could easily, refill if you were to ever lose him. So I don't know if he's a long-term starter, but I think he's a long-term piece, if that makes sense.
My other thing is whenever I talk about these things, I know there could be some semantics on like who's the 2, who's the 4. Like I look at this team and I say, Cade is the 1. Cade is your primary initiator. Give me 3 wings that's not exclusively, but can definitely play off the ball, and then give me a center. And so like, yes, there is some size things that go into that, but we got to remember Asar is a very good rebounder. Cade has been a very good rebounder. Depending on how you fill out those other spots, kind of depends on what you need. So like, that's how I think it was Brian Windhurst who essentially calls it a 1-3-1 kind of roster construction. That's how I envision this thing being. And it could be Ivey, Asar, and Holland as those 3 guys, depending on how they continue to grow and all of that. I want to finish, guys. I'm really sorry because listen, Wes did some true false for us. It's going to be a lot of fun in segment 3, and we are going to do that. So Michael, you asked a question about the draft that I really wanted to talk to. We will try to save these somehow, Wes. Can we screenshot them and save them or something? Aruna, you brought up a question. YouTube user. Like some of you guys have brought up questions about the draft and the picks at the deadline and stuff. We're not going to get to it today. I don't want to get in on those topics and not give them their due diligence. So thank you guys. I'll see if Wes can keep those somehow, screenshot them, and then we'll bring them back somewhere. But I do want to touch on this. I want to end on this, and it will actually lead us into the third segment. Chuck Brewer asks, are the national context folks noticing Cade finally then, Bryce? Yes. And it's borderline annoying because they don't start the conversation with, oh, we were kind of not on board with Cade Cunningham 12 months ago and all of that. But yes, many people are now calling him an all-star. I saw someone tweet the other day, like potential all-NBA conversation, all of that. I think people are getting on board, finally seeing what Cade Cunningham is. There are still some people that push back, like, oh, the analytic, the efficiency numbers, the turnovers, all of that. But the usage is so high. I think most people really understand. So I do think people are starting to take notice.
Yeah, people are paying attention. Like last season, they got notoriety for all the wrong reasons. And this season, I feel like I'm seeing the same amount of attention just in general on social media, obviously for way more positive reasons. So that's obviously very subjective, but just in my eye and obviously from talking to people as well, like people are tuned in and like they definitely see what Cade's doing.
Yeah, I mean, I had somebody walk into my classroom today and go, hey, when are you recording your Pistons podcast again? I was like, this afternoon, actually. Oh, man, tell Cade thanks because he's been winning all of my whatever bets because he always goes over on points, assists, and like, I don't bet, so I don't understand what he's saying. But I'm like, yeah, like he fills up the stat sheet. And so it just, nobody used to ever talk to me about the Pistons, right? Like nobody wanted to talk about Cade Cunningham. And again, Game Theory's doing it. KOC like said, hey, it's finally time to talk about the Pistons. And so it is really cool. And I think I would guess the majority of what I hear or interact with people, they know it's driven by Cade, along with, I think the next person that gets a ton of credit is JB Bickerstaff, and rightfully so, right? I also saw somebody ask earlier, or I had somebody like kind of call me out, like I haven't been on the Cade bandwagon. I've said for a long time, I thought Cade was the face of the franchise and the best player on a, playoff caliber team. All I've ever said is I thought Cade wanted to be a little bit more of a distributor, and I thought getting a big-time bucket getter next to him maybe was the right path. So I think saying that I didn't ever see him as a star or superstar or something like that is taking my words a little bit out of context, and I just wanted to clarify that because I don't feel like I've ever been on the Cade isn't that, like, I've defended him a lot whenever things weren't going well, Omari, and taken a lot of heat when he'd have a rough game and people be like, oh, this is your superstar. Look what he's doing.
Yeah, there's always going to be people who try to like take you out of context to prove a point. And
yeah.
There's always going to be haters,
Nah, he's been awesome this year, though. The 3-point shot, the defensive impact, anything else you have just on this team in general, where things are at, games coming up before we bring in Wes to do the true false.
No, just, it seems like the team is, like, if you want to talk big picture scenario, like, this is, like, their best case scenario through 36 games. Like, if you told anybody before the season, after 36 games, they would be 18 of 18 with momentum on the back half of that, right? Like, 9-12? Like, that's probably the first time they've won 9-12 since I was in middle school, like not even joking, because I graduated middle school in 2008. So that is, it's been a while. So it's been fun to cover. Like, it's been fun to see, just the extent that people are tapped in for positive reasons. And it's crazy, man. Yeah. 18 and 18. This seems figuring some stuff out.
It's really fun to talk about this team. We said this at the Nuggets game. I won't say the name, but a Pistons content creator, like for the actual team, like that creates content for the team, introduced himself before the game in Denver. And we were just talking. He's like, how is it different covering the team this year and stuff? And I was like, we get to talk actual basketball, right? We're not sitting here going, should they trade this guy? Should they go get that guy? Like, we're going to talk about that just a little bit, but in general, we get to talk real basketball and kind of more fun conversations like the one that we're not going to get to in terms of, okay, what's going to happen with this pick? Do you like the draft enough if they get the pick? Like, all of that stuff is more fun to me, Omari, than what this time last year, we had to be talking NBA draft. Like, we had to have been talking the top of the draft, right?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't even thought about the draft of the pot yet, like, that's like, we'll get to it when you get to it.
Walter Ramirez, real quick, and then we'll go to break, and then we'll bring Wes on. Says, I finally caught you guys live. Pistons fan here from the Philippines since 2002. Let's go. Just want to say I love your guys' content, how you analyze the games and situation. More power to you guys. No, thank you, Walter.
No,
we really appreciate it. You're forgetting the great post Josh Smith run of 2015. I don't understand this, but
I am. So the Pistons, long story short, this was one of the first things that really ignited Pistons Twitter, like that brought Pistons Twitter to life. The Pistons were in the dumps. They had Josh Smith, and it was just like they weren't in a good place. They waived Josh Smith. Brennan Jennings just starts going off. They win like 11 of 13. And then Brandon Jennings tragically tears his Achilles, and it all comes to an end. But it was the most riveting 13-game stretch of basketball since 2008, like comfortably.
Here's what's cool is, like, I was jealous the last year or so about the Lions being so good because it's like, man, rightfully so, all the Detroit fans just care about the Lions and they don't care about the Pistons. Like, come listen to our podcast. Now Detroit fans are getting both, right? Like, the Lions are awesome. One of, if not the best team in the league, and Detroit is fun, competitive, night in and night out. So Matthew says, this is our guy from Brazil. Hey, I'm the Pistons fan from far, far away. So we got some arguments going on here about who the furthest one is away. So listen, I said I wouldn't wear my Jennings jersey until we were back at 500. It's been a lock. That's from, you guys are amazing. This is awesome stuff. This is the stuff I don't understand.
Yeah. Like, okay. the stats from that time period are wild. Like, we're just going to go into society real quick. The Pistons were 5, and this is from Keith Smith. The Pistons were 5.
Keith Black Trudeau.
Keith Black Trudeau. I see K-Stat, and
I know.
Like, those are like the only 2 Keiths I know.
Same.
No, that's not true. I know some Keiths. The Pistons were 5 and 23 when Stan Van Gundy released Josh Smith the day before Christmas, and they immediately won 7 in a row and had the top offense and defense in the NBA over that span. Like, straight up, it was a magical run. And that meme people see on Twitter of like the jersey hanging in the rafters, and it's like kind of sarcastic, right? Like Pistons snap 20, like that season, you know?
Yeah.
That was the first time I saw that meme. It was 2014, Pistons wave Josh Smith. Like, I think that's how that meme was created, like the jersey hanging. I'm pretty sure somebody could correct me. Go and know your meme or whatever website. But that's the first time I ever saw that meme. So there's some NBA Twitter meme Pistons lore for you.
I love it. All right, we're going to go to a short break. When we come back, Wes will take over the pod. We're not playing Sheet or Sham. We're playing True or False. So you guys are really going to be able to get involved with this. Wes is going to give us statements, and we can either pick true or false on that statement, and we have to rock with it. We'll get into that right after this.
All right, we are back with segment 3, and we're going to bring our man Wes in to lead us through pretty, I think, fun segment.
Hold on, real quick. Aruna says form a explicitive wall. What? I don't understand.
Yeah. Oh,
that was great too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that became the rallying cry. Like, when I tell you that this whole thing was magical, like it is.
This is really deep, Bryce. Yeah.
Like, it is encoded into Pistons lore because this, like, nothing else happened in like this entire stretch. So it was late in the game that they were like trying to win. I think they needed a bucket or something
against the Spurs. They hit a last second shot to go up, and they needed a stop with only like 0.2 seconds left.
There you go. And Stan Van Gundy's heard screaming like on TV, we're just going to form an effing wall. And like that became like, there was like form an effing wall, like t-shirts, and like it became like a real thing.
All right, we got another one here. This is so cool. Just all the different countries. I'm not going to try to say your name. I apologize. I will mispronounce it because I do that with all names. But Pistons, baby. Hello from Balkans, Bosnia. Love it. Love it. All right, Wes, get us started here on the true false game.
All right, yeah. And so this is not Sheet or Sham. Okay, so you guys just say true, false, whatever, explain it, discuss it, all that stuff, and then we'll move on to the next one when you guys are ready. But Bryce, I'll start off with you. This was actually one you had picked, so I changed it a little bit, and I tried to block it out in the outline so that it'd be a surprise.
I didn't. This is the only one I saw, and I saw that it was blacked out, so I figured you had a curveball.
Well, so Cade Cunningham is an all-star. Seems kind of boring at this point. I'm almost 100% confident that both you two would say yes. If that's not true, then like jump in and explain that part too. But here will be the actual statement. True or false, Cade Cunningham is a top 20 player in the NBA right now. It's more spicy.
I'll say true. So I had him definitely in on my East All-Stars. He's been playing even better since then. The team has won more since then. Like even at that time, I think they were 3 or 4 games below 500. I think I'll just go true. And people could probably name 20 guys that, to counter it. But if it's not, it's really like if he's an all-star, theoretically that's 24, right? So yeah, I'm gonna say true.
Yeah, so in my mind, I'm like going through the stars who are like kind of falling off this year, right? Like,
yeah,
like Jimmy Butler or Paul George. Like I'm thinking of like some of the older guys who are starting to decline a little bit. And how much like you could probably move Cade above like Halliburton at this point. Like you could probably move him above a few of the other young guys. I would say top 20. I think once the dust settles after this season, he'll start to like fall into that top 20 range, especially if the Pistons continue to play at around a 500 pace.
Will J says false. Yeah, so if you guys don't want it called out on the pod, which I'm sure you're cool with, Will J, but says consistency isn't there yet with the turnovers and shot selection. Yeah, like I would listen to people who say false. I think this is a really good way of framing it because if it was just all-star, I think it's 100% true. And so that's really, really interesting. I think what's hard here is, as brought up, Cade is the guy here. And so like, that's what's hard to like equate him to like even somebody like Damian Lillard who gets to play off of a Giannis. Like it probably is crazy to say that Cade is better than Dame right now, but he is tasked with so much more than what Dame is. So Uno Dos Tres says, hey guys, love the pod. Hope to see you, Omari, in New Orleans for the Pels Pistons game and get a picture or something. Shad says, Omari,
100%, man. We'll make it happen.
Shad says Omari and Bryce are like Guy and Kakashi with, I don't know. I don't understand.
I was gonna pull that comment up like and see if you knew who Guy and Kakashi were.
Yeah, I do not. So
I have no idea either, by the way.
I hope this is appropriate for the pod.
It is. Are you familiar with, have you ever heard of Naruto?
Yes, I think.
Okay, so they're just characters from Naruto. That's all we need to know.
Like YouTube user says, Cade dragging this team. I think what puts him in the top 20 conversation right now is that this team is winning, right? Like if all of a sudden the team wasn't winning and stuff like that, there's these other things. So, but yeah, I'll call it there. Next one, Wes.
Well, let's take a follow-up real quick just as a detour, because if he's top 20, and you guys both said true to that, does that mean, if things continue as they are to the end of the season, is he getting some all-NBA buzz?
It would be close, right? Like if he's top 20, there's 15 spots. There's conversation.
I'm going to say no, only because all NBA is so ridiculously competitive in today's NBA. Like, do I think he'll have the numbers worthy of conversation? Yes, but I think when it comes down to it, like, I feel like there's like 10 guys every single year that's like, they were all deserving and just didn't get it because there's not enough teams. We should probably have 4 teams at this point instead of 3. So I just feel like at that point, it's a numbers game. It's not against Cade or anything, but he's just now arriving to the party. So I feel like it's something where more experienced guys will get favored.
So here's the thing where this conversation gets a little bit difficult. And like just looking at like who I voted for All-Star when we did that on Game Theory, like the injury factor, right? Because like when you start talking all NBA, he may be there if he plays the game, but if he plays the games, but think about all the guys who aren't even eligible right now, And so like, that's where the top 20 conversation and all of that gets a little bit complex because some of these guys aren't eligible that maybe would be better than him, right? Like Joel Embiid's probably not going to end up being eligible for this. Paolo has already missed too many games to be eligible for this. Chet has already missed too many games to be eligible for. I think Luka is going to end up not being eligible for all NBA because of games played. And so because of that, if he continues to do, like, here's the thing. This is really impressive for 30 whatever games. If he actually does this for 75 games, guys, 75 games of what's he still averaging right now? 24, essentially 24, 10 and 6. Like there's just, how many guys do that? And he's doing it on 45, 38, 81. playing some quality defense. If this team is 41-41 with those numbers and you take all those players out of the equation, I think he's at least having the conversation, right? And so that's where that conversation gets complex, I think, is the injuries and who's eligible and who's not.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's a pretty compelling argument. Like, I would just have to sit down and honestly just count, and do some of that. But especially with the narrative of the Pistons coming off of a 14-win season and the losing streak and all that, you could definitely, I think the overall package should at least get him in the discussion. So can I retroactively change my answer?
So here's what's hard, though. So when Wes said top 20, my initial reaction was true. When you said all NBA, my initial reaction was false. And I'm like, there's only 5-spot difference. So I think where I'm at now is I can solidly say he's a top 25 to 30 player. And then if we continue to get this consistency and this level of winning, he starts to vault into that next conversation.
Yeah, no, 100%. He's definitely on that trajectory looking at this point in the year. So you talked me into it. At first it was just reflexively, every single year I was just there's so many guys who deserve it and don't get it. Probably not. But no, with the new road, you're absolutely right. A lot of guys are not going to be in contention that normally would be.
Yep.
All right, let's move off Cade now. So for our next true or false question, Omari, this one you first. Ausar Thompson is the best defender on the Pistons.
It's really only between two players, and I think right now I'm still going to give a nod to Beef Stew only because there's a bigger sample size of work. So I would go false. I would go with Stew.
Okay, I'll play the other side of it. Oh, Sharon Dalton, interesting, says false. Ron Holland.
I think he's been among their best.
Ausar, I think, is extremely disruptive. And I think that matters. I think when you see this team at their best, it's not even necessarily just solid, fundamentally sound defensive efforts. They're just causing they're taking something away from the other team. Truly, when you watch a game, guys, watch and see how comfortable the offense looks whenever they're really scoring points and how the Pistons never take them out of any sort of flow or anything like that. And so I think with that, I think Ausar probably causes about as much of that as anybody on the team. YouTube user brings up a great point, Stu, because of his position, center just meaning more, all of that. I probably would still say Stu. I still think Ausar has some growth defensively, though, Omari, as well. I'm afraid to get Pistons fans hating me. He has some real screen navigation things he's still got to work out to really be the level of defender. I don't know where the fouls are at now, but I know at one point, those were really high. They've come down. They truly have come down. So they're down to 5 every 36 minutes. Aruna, but does he draw charges like Tim Hardaway Jr.? Nobody draws charges like Tim Hardaway Jr., Aruna. That is for Tim Hardaway Jr. alone. So I would probably have answered false and said Isaiah Stewart as well, but it's really, really close. And quick shout out here to Pistons Talk. What up, fellas? Watching from work. So, hopefully you have the headphones in and you're hiding it from your boss and all of that. But
loud and proud. Turn the speakers up.
That was a good question. I think the three guys that have the conversation are Ausar, Ron, and Stu. I think those are. I guess Paul, because of how much disruption he causes, the minutes just aren't even close there for Paul Reed. But yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, I think by the end of the season, I could change my answer to Ausar. I just think with Stu has been more consistent and it's been there since day one this season.
So I would say, I think right now as we sit today, I think the answer is Isaiah Stewart. Keith brings up Ausar to me has the potential to be transcendent in his position of defense because of how much havoc he can cause. Reminds me of young Rodman. If we were just talking upside, I would 100% say Ausar Thompson. I think Ausar has the highest up. I don't think Isaiah Stewart probably ends up being a defensive player or, all defense team or something like that. I think Ausar has the tools to be that level of a defensive difference maker.
Yeah, if you're asking who I think would be better in 5 years or even 2 or 3 years, then Ausar's just got tools and instincts that are uncommon, right? But but coming back from the injury, it took him a bit to get his win back, and he's been good, but again, I think by the end of this season, depending on how he goes from here, I could change my answer.
And Isaiah Stewart also has that versatility at the center position where he can step out and switch and those type of things. So Pistons Talk says no headphones in. Haha, have 3 coworkers walking with me. Hey, free press. bump up those watch numbers because we have people collaborating together. They're carpooling to watch the episode, so we can bump those numbers up just a little bit. Okay, Wes, next one. We may have to rapid fire just a little bit.
Well, let's stick with the defense then, just because it's related. So true or false, Bryce, the Pistons only have 2+ defenders on the roster. Like 2 guys that are legitimately plus defenders.
False. I think Asar is. I think Stu is. I would give Ron Holland a little bit better than neutral. And in some games, I think Cade is better than neutral. It hasn't been as good as what it was earlier in the year, but I think it's still probably... Wait, who said... What was the question? Restate it completely. Maybe I said it wrong.
The Pistons only have 2+ defenders on the roster.
Okay, yeah, so false. Okay, yeah, I stick to that.
Yeah, I'm also going to go false. Like, obviously, Asar and Stu, but I would also say that I think Ron nudges positive just because of just, like, the sheer effort and havoc he can wreak sometimes. And then Paul Reed, I think, in his limited minutes has also been a plus defender. So I would say 4. Like, I think they've had multiple guys who could make a difference on that end.
Yeah, so I like it. There's some falses in here. There's some trues in here.
Are we still ranking Cade as a plus defender? Or is he more so with neutral at this point?
I would say I have him slightly above neutral, and that's still holding on to how he was defending to start the year. But Cade has been impressive with his offensive load, I think, is the key there. This isn't a major knock on him. The fact that he's even neutral is a huge compliment and testament to how good he is on that end. He shouldn't have to take that offensive load and then be a major defensive, impact and factor. So I don't think that's a negative. I just think at the beginning of the year, like, it was real two-way impact. Now I think he's just solid. And yeah, I would say it's neutral, maybe slightly above. He has some really good on-ball reps. The off-ball defense is honestly where I think Cade needs to be better, like not losing track of shooters, not giving beat back door. And the rebounding has also ticked down just a little bit, it seems like, over the last couple weeks. So yeah, I would say I still think either collaborating some of those guys or whatever, it's slightly above 2. We got to get to 3 somewhere.
All right, let's go back to end of the year awards. So true or false, Omari, Ron Holland will be on an all rookie team.
Nah, I don't know if I've been plugged into the entire rookie class enough to even like properly answer that. I'm going to say true. I think he sustains a role all season, and I think he'll start to get more attention for the pretty solid year he's had so far.
Okay, so just looking at rookie totals. Okay, both of you, any guesses on where Ron Holland ranks in total minutes played for rookies?
I would guess 8th or 9th.
Wes?
Yeah, probably the same, 8th or 9th.
15th.
Oh, wow.
Points.
Man, I mean, like, if he's 15th in minutes, I can't imagine he's top 10 in points.
Yeah, no, I think it's maybe like 13th.
11th. Rebounds.
Again, I don't think he's top 10 in any category.
14th.
Yeah.
Steals, he is tied for 13th. Blocks, just not very many. Like, here's my point is, like, I wonder if I was doing totals there for everybody. Also, like, if you look at averages, obviously those numbers could be a little bit different. I don't know. Misi is going to make it. Jalen Wells is going to make it. Tristan Da Silva is going to make it with Orlando if he continues to get minutes when those guys get back. Sar has been trending up.
If McCain's done for the year, then he's probably not, huh?
So McCain will be the interesting one.
Risa Shea's been pretty good.
Risa Shea's started almost every game for that team. Not every game, but it started a lot of games for that team.
Yeah.
AJ Mitchell plays a very interesting quality role for maybe the best team in the league.
Connect and Edie have been good on playoff teams. Like,
I think it's closer than what you may think. If he makes it its second team, I'm going to say false. I would love for it to be true. I just don't know that voters are going to understand the impact. Like, what voter is going to know the impact Ron Holland made last night, right? Like,
yeah.
no voter is gonna know that.
Yeah, I think that like looking at the list, there's been higher profile rookies on teams that have been better than the Pistons, obviously, and voters always tend to favor rookies who like carve out pretty substantial roles on good teams. Like I think about Keegan Murray when he was a rookie.
Yep.
And, like if Ron ever gets to the point where he could start more games or at least get to like 20 minutes off the bench consistently, then maybe that changes. But but his role is probably just too small, honestly.
That's the answer. If he started to get more minutes or they slid him into that starting spot or whatever, where people would recognize a little bit more. But like, I don't think people are going to be able to look at the raw numbers and like automatically defer to him. And I don't think people will watch the games close enough to have the like intricate conversation and understanding of how he's impacted some of these games. So I'm going to say false. I don't think he ends up getting there. That doesn't mean this is a failure of a rookie season or I'm not still extremely excited about him. Can the SAR actually fly? It's close.
Do we have time for one more?
Absolutely. I do.
Yeah, we can do one more.
Let's end on this one because it's kind of fun. The context of this question has changed given where things are with the standings right now. So true or false,
Okay.
Bryce, the Pistons will be a play-in team.
True.
I'm also going to go true. Yeah, true.
And for the record, this is probably the first time I've really felt that, like where I've outwardly felt like there was a better chance they end up in the play-in than they don't. This stretch of wins says, oh, false, they will be top 6. I love false playoffs. Okay.
Right now, they're just in.
It.
Yeah.
They're 7th right now, I believe.
Oh, maybe I misread that.
But so here's the reason I say true. Only one of these teams in the top 10 right now is not going to be in this situation. There's only one team coming from behind them in the East, in my opinion, and that's Philly if they stay healthy. So, right now the Pistons are 7th, Hawks are 8th at the same record, the Heat are 9th, looking to trade Jimmy Butler, the Bulls are 17 and 19, the Sixers are 14 and 20. The Nets aren't going to try to win any more games. The Raptors are 8 and 28, which is 10 games below the Pistons, and then you have the Hornets and the Wizards. I only see one team falling out of that if the Sixers get in. I'll just say that the Pistons find a way to hold on. Top 6 is interesting. I think the top 5 is pretty locked, Omari, right? Cavs, Celtics, Knicks, Magic are going to get healthier. Bucks.
I would say so. And then once you get past that, by the way, like, the Pistons are only a game behind the Bucks for 5 right now, but I assume that they will continue to get better as, they settle more into their system. But yeah, I mean, you look at it, like, I still think, like, let's give it, like, I'm like another, like, let's see All-Star Weekend, how they are as far as like top 6 seed. Like, it's a long season. Like, I've seen how teams can ebb and flow throughout the entirety of the season. And like the back half of January gets a lot tougher for them. They have a 5-game road trip. Like, they've got a stretch where they're pretty much only playing playoff teams. So I'm not quite there yet, but I'm going to say true on them being a playing team at the very least.
And something we'll talk about next episode, it was some of those questions were about, like, what do they do at the deadline? And I think that determines a lot of this as well. Here's the thing. If Malik Beasley walks in and says, I'm going to go to a contender or I'm going to walk this offseason, you have to trade him. Like, as much as I hate that, like, you would have to. I don't want to trade Malik Beasley. I want to be clear. Malik, please commit to staying in Detroit long-term and signing a long-term contract. Like, please. We love you here. You play great. You're a great fit for this team. But there is a world where Trajan doing his due diligence would be better off trading him. Now, the other thing is maybe as a third team in a trade, you get a real rotation player, right? Like, maybe you're able to take on somebody that really adds to what the team is doing. I don't think they outright sell at all. I think it's just a thing. I really think Beasley is the only one to really keep an eye on, depending on what they feel like is going to happen in free agency. Interesting real note here. The draft will have a better pull to the bottom than the Wemby draft. The one thing I will say about the draft, I do think teams will be inclined to tank hard because I think the way this draft is shaping up right now is very, very, very heavy in the top 2 or 3, depending on how you feel about some guys, and then a steep drop off in tier and talent after that. Teams are going to be really inclined to make it as high a chance as possible to be have a top 3 pick based on how this class was a top 5 pick at one time. Nolan Traore is barely hanging on to the first round right now. VJ Etchcom has dropped out of that solid top 5. And so, like, I think that's an interesting point. Some of these teams are really going to tank hard to try to maybe Tech would be the other guy, Wes. That's the other guy that could be moved at the deadline. Probably need to have that conversation at some point as well. So that's fun, Wes. I've had a few more. We can probably bring those back. So
yeah, I mean, we could definitely revisit like once we're 2/3 of the way through the year.
Yeah. So listen, it's fun. Vibes are good. Hopefully they continue to win. Cade continues to be an all-star. Bobby Bucket says, who's top 4? Flag, Harper, Yegor, and Ace. I would say Flag and Harper have supplanted themselves in a tier of their own. And I have Ace there as well. I would say Kasparis Yakichonis at Illinois is actually higher than Yegor. Yegor's struggled the last few games, especially shooting the ball after a hot start. So it's kind of fluid. I think those top two for sure. People have varying thoughts on Ace. It's just not the same top five it was before the season started.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm still a ways from participating in any real draft talk, especially this season. So I'm going to let you pick on that one.
Nah, I appreciate it. I'm glad that we don't have to talk about it. It will be a conversation, though, because as our listeners know, this team gets into the playoffs and that draft pick is gone. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It just is a factor in everything that's going to happen. The other thing I'll say quickly, Omari, I kind of want him to get in the play-in game because I want to see how they play in a win or go home situation. Like, even as much as a series would be fun, I want to see them in that. Looking forward to not having a first round pick this year. Sure. Yeah. Again, we'll get into that draft conversation later, but the draft's not quite as good right now as what some people are talking about it, in my opinion. I want to see him in the play-in game. Those 1-game samples, think about the data that they would be able to collect from that, Omari.
Yeah, for sure. And we've said it before a few times, but once you get to the point where you're winning actual basketball games, you hit a certain level, like you start to look past the draft in that context because like
you have good players on the team already.
Yeah, it's like you don't need to, lose and take a swing on something that may not work out. Like draft picks are investments that take years generally to return back on. Like, of course, you could always get like a Derek Lively or this and that, but that's usually not. You usually do not bank on that, being a franchise changer. Like, unless you're at a point where you're like starting from scratch, right? Like the Pistons were when they first got Cade. Like, you're not necessarily 4 years after you go number one to get another number one. You want to progress forward and you want to show that the players you've invested in are paying for it now, right? So if they snap that cycle this year, hey, like I think there's always going to be a pro draft crowd, but along with that, you can look at any top five and see that there's usually a miss in there. So just, pat yourself on the back and say, we would have drafted the best and we got to play in game. So it works out pretty well.
So, yep, I'm with you. As Chuck says, I want that pick gone so we can trade picks again. Bobby Buckets, if it would open for a world of being able to trade future first, I agree with that. So it would be a lot of fun. Wes, thank you. Always appreciate you. Crushed it on this episode. Looked up some stats for us. You had the true or false ready to go. We may just have to incorporate that like as a regular kind of segment here and there.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yes, make sure you guys are listening to Wes over on the Pin Down, over on the Detroit Bad Boys YouTube channel. Make sure you're reading the Substack. Man, I think how much fun it would be to do a Substack post over a play-in game or a playoff series. I would be in heaven. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Make sure you're reading Omari on the Free Press. Omari, take it away, my guy.
Yeah, big thanks to everybody for tuning in. Happy New Year, even though we did wish everybody Happy New Year last podcast. We recorded 4 days ago.
Okay, this was Omari, you know what's funny? We didn't even have to do the New Year's resolution pod to get through this portion of the season because we had actual content to talk about. Like, not having to do stuff like that is, I thought about that. I was like, how do we switch up the same conversation we're having every week? We don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah, New Year's resolution, keep winning.
Yeah.
Yeah, so big thanks to our audio producer, Robin Chan, our editor-in-chief, Nicole Avery Nichols, and big shout out to Wes, as always, and we'll talk to you all next week.